The similarities between Carter's defeat in 1980 and Obama's coming defeat in 2012 are very significant and really worth focusing on. That's what we'll talk about in the lunch video today. When we look back at the election of 1980, we tend to see, it was Ronald Reagan and conservatism triumphant and ascendant and swept America. In fact, that had almost nothing to do with it. Reagan's conservatism was a liability during the election, not an asset. And for the most part, he tried not to feature it because he had very much in mind Barry Goldwater's defeat in 1964, pushing a very similar agenda. But the election was about Jimmy Carter, not about Ronald Reagan. It was about Carter's failures. Reagan would say, for example, there's a misery index combining the unemployment rate and the inflation rate, and it was like 20-something%. And Reagan had that famous line, "Are you better off today than you were 4 years ago?" And everybody said no, and they all voted against Carter. The negatives on Carter were not ideological. It was not that he was too liberal. Back then, Carter was the moderate. He was the moderate Southern governor who had gotten elected president, defeating Morris Udall, the candidate of the left of the Democratic Party, and he governed from the center. He became a crazy leftist later after he left office and got paid off by the Muslim world and all kinds of stuff and tempted with the Nobel Prize. But back as president, he was a moderate. The negatives on Carter were that he was incompetent, nothing he did worked out, he didn't know how to manage the economy, he was in over his head, he had gone to Washington with too little experience in how Washington worked, and he was just not big enough for the job. Those were the negatives. And those negatives were equal opportunity negatives. They got Republicans and independents and Democrats and liberals and conservatives to vote against Jimmy Carter because they were not ideological. Increasingly, that is the case against Barack Obama. He already has the votes against. We already have the votes against him that are because of the health care law and the budget deficit and the huge stimulus spending and his environmental policies and the whole leftist socialist government takeover theme of this administration. Those people are already voting against him. But what remains is a group of people who could be enough to reelect him, who are not ideologically conservative, are not particularly offended by the president's ideology, but are looking at it and saying, what can this guy get accomplished? What can he do? He's too weak, he's not competent, he's in over his head. The same adjectives that were used to defeat Jimmy Carter. And because the Republicans were wise enough to nominate Mitt Romney as opposed to a more threatening figure, those voters feel very comfortable voting for Romney. And if they're on the extreme left, they feel very comfortable in staying home. You know, they don't have a lot on their agenda. They're unemployed because unemployment is so high, but they still may not vote. And I believe that what you are seeing now is the transition from the ideological attack on Barack Obama to the competence attack on Obama. And that is increasing the Romney lead over him and decreasing Obama's job approval rating. And you have to see the developments of the last week and probably the next few weeks, not in terms of ideology, but in terms of competence, ability, and stature for the president. And he's falling short on all of those counts. Thanks a lot for watching.